Good morning. It's June the 16th. We're halfway through September. And actually, this is the third time I've started this because every time I get started, the phone starts ringing. And I have discovered there's volume control on that thing, so I've turned it down. Anyway, what I was going to say is that last night my son and I were texting back and forth, and one of his best friends, who's also his brother-in-law, for the past decade or so has been the manager of a small farm and vineyard in Northern California. And a few days ago, that was just completely and totally destroyed by the local forest fires going through the area. Everything was destroyed: houses, barns, fields, vineyards, the whole 9 yards. It's just gone. And fortunately, Joel, that's his name, has been able to go back to more to the interior of the state where his parents live, and they're going to help him a little bit. And the rest of the families are coming together to try to help Joel replace a lot of what he has lost. I mean, he got out with just whatever he could throw in the back of his pickup truck and get on the road. And we were talking last night that it must be terrible to lose everything you own other than almost the clothes on your back. I mean, everything you've accumulated for years is gone. Keepsakes, pictures, your silverware and dish, everything is just it's gone. And you confront the reality of having to start over again. Now, I've worked with people who have been through that. I mean, who have lost everything either in a natural disaster, or maybe their house is burned down for one reason or another. But they just have absolutely nothing except the clothes on their back, almost literally. And how do you come back from that? I mean, where do you start? I would think, well, you go out and you buy, some new clothes and some things like this, but at some point you're going to have to find a place to live, and you're going to have to, if you find a place to live, then you're going to have to buy mundane things as plates and silverware and pots and pans and a toaster. Um, it's it's a long shopping list, and there's stuff you'll never be able to replace. Um, Memories of things, pictures, um, just things you had that reminded you of people. A cameo from your grandmother. Um, I know, say in my case, I have a letter opener that my father used for years and years and years. Little things that mean a lot to you, but now are gone, and just no recovering that. How do you deal with that loss? How do you deal with um, that destruction? How do you deal with that sense of whatever? I'm grasping for a word. But as we do this physically sometimes, as we feel like we've lost everything, um, we feel like Job. I mean, sitting around with his friends, and Job has lost his family, his farms, his wealth. He has nothing left, um, except some well-intentioned friends, and sometimes you wonder about their intentions. And so it's hard enough to do that physically. It's hard enough to rebuild just physical things, just, things. But think about if we feel like we've lost everything spiritually. that we feel like we have lost all contact with God, that we feel like nobody listens and nobody cares. That's got to be a terribly empty feeling. I've dealt with people who have lost all their physical belongings, either through a natural disaster or maybe their house burned down. And while it's tough, it's hard, you can begin again. But I've also worked with people who feel that they have lost all connection with their soul, if you will, their spirit, their connectedness to God or to each other. Sometimes we call that hopelessness or despair. We say that that might have been the sin of Judas, who believed that because of his betrayal of Christ, he was just utterly cut off and condemned and damned for all time. And so, having no seeming recourse, he went and hung himself. But we also see St. Peter, who denied Jesus 3 times, who did not quite get to the level of despair that Judas did, and was confronted by Jesus on the Galilean seashore after the resurrection. And Jesus asked Peter, "Do you love me?" Then, feed my sheep. And the question is posed about 3 times. And Peter finally, in frustration, says, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you. You know everything. You know that I care about you." And I think at that point, Peter understood that he had been forgiven and that he had never really lost his connectedness to Christ. He had simply misplaced it. I think we all feel that from time to time. I'm sure there are times when our lives are such that we wonder if anybody in the universe listens to us. Does God care about us? Does God know we even exist? Jesus tells us in the Gospels that God has counted the very hairs of our head. The meaning of that being, God knows us so intimately that he knows how much hair we have. And I think by extension, we are saying that God knows us so intimately that he knows when we are feeling lost or cut off or abandoned. And he tries to find ways to remind us that that's not true. That's a perception we have, but it's not true. We may feel no one cares, but we know God does. We may think we understand the despair that maybe Jesus felt on the cross when he utters the words in the Psalms of, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And so I think there are times we all know that. There are times we seem to open our eyes and all we see is the black interior of the tomb. And there are times we just wonder how we're going to go forward. But these are the times that Jesus wants us to know he's there. He wants us to know that he brings light to the tomb by rolling away the stone of despair. He wants us to know that he cares deeply, deeply for us. He wants us to know that we are his beloved brothers and sisters, beloved children of the Father. We may not always feel it, but we don't always go on our feelings. Joel, my son's friend, will recover. He's young and resilient. We don't know what the future holds for Joel. We don't know if the owners of the farm will rebuild or if they'll just take the insurance money and run. But we know that Joel is surrounded by family and friends, and that he will be reclothed. At one point he will end up with new pots and pans, new dishes and silverware, a new place to live, and we believe a new job. I also believe that when we feel cut off from God, we can recover from that as well. It may require an extra determination on our point. It may sometimes lead us into the dark depths of the belly of the great fish as it did Jonah. But we come out of that and we go forward. We know that God reaches out his hands to us and says, take my hand and let me help you through this. So, if you're feeling lost, alone, cut off, that no one cares, I hope you know that God cares. I hope you know that Christ came to tell us and to show us that God cares. And that, as St. Paul says, there is nothing that can stand between you and God's love. Neither life, nor death, nor height, nor depth, nor principalities, any of this, none of this can stand between you and the love of God. You just have to accept it and make it yours. And like Joel, maybe you'll have to let people help you walk through this. But we get through it together. So fear not. I have overcome the world, says Jesus. Fear not. I know you better than you know yourself. I know all the hairs on your head. Fear not. You are of more value than many sparrows. Fear not. Fear not. Hope you have a great day.